Introduction to Algebra, Part 9, more on graphing. At the end of this lesson, you will learn some tricks to graphing lines, understand the importance of intercepts, and know the challenges of more complex equations. On graphs, the best way to start is to figure out what the intercepts are. So let's take the equation y equals 3x plus 6. Now the intercepts are where x equals 0 and y equals 0. So we want to solve for when x equals 0 and y equals 0. So let's start by solving where x is 0. Now x is 0 on that vertical line. You see where it says 0. So y equals 3 times 0 plus 6, where x is 0. Y equals 0 plus 6, so y equals 6. So we know that the first spot on our graph is on that vertical axis, that vertical line where x is 0. We count 6 ticks up, and we have y equals 6. Okay, so now we're going to solve where y equals 0. So we take the equation y equals 3x plus 6. We put y as 0, so we know 0 equals 3x plus 6. We subtract 6 from both sides, so we have negative 6 equals 3x. Then we're going to divide by 3 on both sides, so we have negative 6 divided by 3 equals x. And we know negative 6 divided by 3 is a negative 2. So we know that on the horizontal line, we're going to count over 2. Now on this graph, it's a little weird because of the way the stuff came out, but we're going to count 2 over for x equals negative 2. Now that we've got the x-intercept where x is 0 and the y-intercept where y is 0, we can connect the lines. And that shows us our line. So you see here we've shown you that equation. So let's take another example of y equals 2x plus 4, and we want to solve for x equals 0 and y equals 0. Well, let's start with solving for x, where x equals 0. Well, if x equals 0, y equals 2 times 0 plus 4, or y equals 4. Now we do the same thing for y. So now we say 0 equals 2x plus 4. We subtract 4 from both sides. So we have negative 4 equals 2x. We divide by 2 on both sides. So we got negative 4 divided by 2 equals x. And we have x equals negative 2. Now we mark those 2 points where x equals 0, where y equals 4, and that's on that vertical line. We go up 4 points. And then we also do x equals negative 2, where y equals 0, which is on that horizontal line. And now we just connect those 2 points. Okay, so everything we've done at this point has been what they call linear equations, where you don't have any exponents, where you don't have any factors like squared or cubed. But let's take the following example where y equals x squared. Well, we solve for x equals 0, and we get 0. And then we also solve for y equals 0, and we get x equals 0. So you'll notice when you graph those 2 points, all you get is 1 point, which isn't very helpful. So with equations which are more complicated, what we'll do is solve for different values. So in this case, we're going to solve for x equals 1 and x equals negative 1. Well, if x equals 1, 1 times 1 is 1, so y equals 1. But what if x is negative 1? Well, in this case, if x is negative 1, y also equals 1, because we know that negative 1 times 1 is 1. We also know that if x equals 0, y equals 0. There's one other thing that we know, which is that, so we know that we have those values for x and y, but we also know that y can never be negative. And let me tell you why. A positive number times a positive number is a positive number, and a negative number times a negative number is a positive number. Since we're multiplying x times itself, it's always either going to be 2 positive together or 2 negatives together. So y will never be negative. Now we take the points that we know, the 2 values for x and the value for y, and we get what's called a parabola. Okay, time for some more questions. Let's graph the following equations. Y equals 8x minus 4, y equals 2x plus 6, and y equals 3x minus 6. So go ahead and hit pause, and when you graph those 3 equations, resume, and we'll show you how to solve them. So let's start with y equals 8x minus 4. Well, we want to solve for when x is 0 and y is 0, and let's start with when y is 0. Well, we know that 0 equals 8x minus 4. We add 4 to both sides, and we say 4 equals 8x. And we can divide by 8 on both sides, so we have 4 over 8 equals x. And the x is 1/2. Now, let's solve for when x is 0. Well, y equals 8 times 0 minus 4, so y equals -4. Now we mark those 2 points on the graph where x is 0 and y is 0, and we connect them together. Okay, so now let's take the next one, y equals 2x plus 6. And again, we're going to solve for when x is 0 and y is 0. Let's start with y is 0. So 0 equals 2x plus 6. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides, so we have -6 equals 2x. And then we're going to divide by 2, and -6 divided by 2 is -3, so x is -3. So we know when y is 0, x is -3. Now let's solve for when x is 0. Well, we know y equals 2 times 0 plus 6, so y equals 6 when x is 0. Now all we do is graph those 2 points on the line and connect them, and here we have our chart. Okay, last one, y equals 3x minus 6. So again, we want to solve for when x is 0 and y is 0. And I always do y is 0 first, so when y is 0, x 0 equals 3x minus 6. We add 6 to both sides, so we know 6 equals 3x. We divide by 3 on both sides, and we get x is equal to 2. So we know when y is 0, x is 2. Now the next one is we solve for when x is 0. Well, when x is 0, y equals 3 times 0 minus 6, so y equals -6. Now all we do is plot the points on the graph and draw them together. And I hope you've enjoyed this video.